I am so delighted to be here today and to talk about a topic that has been part of my career for, I would say, the last 30 years. It started at Dartmouth College. I was at the national capital in Washington, D.C. for 10 years to make sure that the topic of financial literacy would get some policy attention. And finally, I arrived at Stanford, and I wanted to tell you that my routine every morning is to walk through the campus. Even every day, even though I've been here for a year and a half now, I am just so amazed by how beautiful this campus is. And when it's the good kind of energy or my ritual to come to my office and work on a topic that I'd like to describe to you today, which is why we need a different approach to our financial decision making, and why this topic, which has been a topic of research and policy, really applies to each of us, but certainly and in particular to young people. And this is why I'm also so excited to be able to teach a new course here to our Stanford students. My name is Annamaria Lusardi, and as you can tell from my accent, I am Italian, just in case you thought I was from Brooklyn. And I also want to say a special hi to the people from Rome and from Italy who are joining today. I would like to share a presentation I've prepared, and I hope you can see it, and it is showing up in the full screen. What I'd like to do is give you some statistics, take you really through a journey of this work that we have been doing. This is a team of people working together, in particular here at Stanford, and also we'll stop at some intermediate point if there are questions, and I'll be very happy to take, in particular, many more questions at the end. So let me start by motivating, first of all, why financial literacy is so important today. And I just want to motivate it really with lots of data. That's the approach that I've been taking. And in fact, my research is a lot about measurement, measuring financial literacy, because only if we measure, we can understand if there is a problem or not, or what the situation is. But I'm going to start with the message of my presentation today. So I'd like to say at the very beginning why we need this different approach to financial decision making, and also tell you about the initiative that we have here at Stanford, the Initiative for Financial Decision Making. And this is supported by a lot of research that we have been doing. I also want to tell you some of the impact we're having so far, and why this financial literacy for all is not a slogan, but it's a suggestions that I'd like to give to each of you, and that we are also incorporating here in our academic setting and in the courses that we are offering to the students. So let me start about why this is important, but in particular, I'd like you to think of all of the decisions that we all face today. But in particular, I'd like you to think of the decision that a young person is facing today. We start our economic life in debt. If you go to college, on average, a student is going to have student loan. We are now in charge, much more than in the past, about saving and investing for our retirement. We have access to financial instruments that are a lot more complex. Think of cryptos, think of alternative investment, venture capital, private equity. And, the labor market also requires new knowledge and new skills, for example, for us to be able to do well. And if you look at the sector at the moment that are pushing the economy, that are growing the economy, require specific skills. I'd like you for a moment to think of all of these many decisions, and, I hope it is clear that, we need knowledge, we need an approach to make these decisions. In the past, they were made by a CFO. In the past, with defined benefit pension, a CFO was making decisions about how to invest the pension that we were going to get. And now we are in charge of that decision. So we need to have knowledge, and we need to have tools to make decisions. We need a framework for making good decisions. Common wisdom really is not enough. And I also would like to emphasize that the reason why we need to talk about financial literacy has not to do with crisis, and it's not to do with the fact that the market, for example, has been going up and down so much in the past few days. It has to do with the fact that the world is changing and we need new skills. And these skills are very important. Well, when I looked at the state of financial literacy in the US and around the world, I was actually shocked to find, as I will show in a moment, that first of all, our knowledge of the principles behind financial decision making are sorely lacking, and that we don't even have the knowledge of the ABC of personal finance. And instead, unfortunately, we need that knowledge to be able to make good financial decisions. And given the complexities of these decisions, we need a much more rigorous approach to what we have been doing now, which is just making decisions often with very limited information and very limited knowledge. So let me already anticipate what is it that we are doing here. So we have started to teach personal finance, and I want to give you a list of the topics that we cover in the personal finance course that we are offering, because this is also suggestions for everyone. These are the type of decision we face, and these are, in a sense, the approaches that would be helpful to consider. So in our personal finance, we cover the basics of personal finance, and then we actually do some accounting for households, meaning we need to start with balance sheet and with income and expense statement, so we can actually know where we are in our situation and also have a plan to how we can grow our wealth and take care of our cash flows, inflow and outflows. From that, and given the objective that we have set up for ourselves as we think of saving decisions, the model that is useful to consider is, of course, a life cycle model that takes into consideration not just our income today, but our income over that life cycle, considering as well that there is uncertainty. And of course, as much as the asset, we also need to do debt management. We need to understand our debt position and manage our debt well. And given the importance of the FICO score and how the FICO is going to affect the interest we get on our debt instrument, we also need to take good care of our FICO score. I listed some of these initial topics, considering, in a sense, all of this research that has been done on this topic and that we can incorporate, therefore, in our financial decision making. In addition, there are important decisions we have to face, including buying a house, should we buy or should we rent, buying a car, should we buy or should we lease, and other important purchases. A very important decision as well is also investing, and not just in financial market, but also in human capital. And how do we make these decisions? What are the best investment strategy that are in line with our objectives? Another important decision is tax and tax planning, in addition to retirement planning, because we have to take care also of our well-being after retirement, the replacement rate, as we say, of Social Security and pension, is probably not enough, given the situation, and given that we need as well to make up for potentially income shortfall at retirement. Employers are offering us a lot of opportunities to save for retirement. In addition to taxes, taxes also sometimes offer us some important benefits to take advantage for our retirement. And also we, of course, need to make important decisions about risk, insurance against risk, and making sure that chance doesn't take away from our path. These are, I have summarized in a sense, the 10 topics that are really part of the financial decision that we all make. Let me come back in a moment to review them. And in particular, what I wanted to tell you is for each of these topics, we have now a lot of research we can bring to make sure that individuals have good information and they can make rigorous financial decisions. For some of you who have taken our MBA here at the GSB, you might recognize that this is similar to corporate finance or some of the decision in corporate finance. We did incorporate indeed some of this topic because in the same way we are making rational decisions about, for example, where to invest our liquidity or how to keep a good balance. In the same way, we want to do this for our financial decision making. I don't know if you know some of these topics in the details, but the third topic is very dear to me. The life cycle model of savings was, for example, very much behind a professor at Princeton that was one of my advisors, Angus Deaton, who actually won the Nobel Prize for highlighting how important some decisions are and how important it is, for example, to incorporate uncertainty in this uncertain future in our decision making. And we can do so. We can, in a sense, take our calculated risk as we make financial decisions. And it is important to not just think about today, but of course, think about, our lifetime or potentially beyond if we have children that we want to bequeath for the future. So what I just want to mention here is that, these decisions are complex. As you can think of, many of these decisions, require information, require calculations, require to compare cost and benefits. And this is what we would like people to do to be able to do well in their path toward financial security. I'm going to come back again to discuss some of this topic at the end, but I wanted to put right there, what has been, in a sense, our approach to make sure that we equip people with the knowledge and tools necessary to make the type of financial decision we face today. So this is, in essence, the Initiative for Financial Decision Making that we have launched last September. It is an initiative that brings together 3 institutions. We don't work in silos here at Stanford. Our objective is really to transform personal finance education. And I will tell you a little bit more how we plan to do so and how excited it is that we are able to bring together all of these talents here at Stanford to make sure that not just young people, but overall Americans are really better able to make this type of decision that we are required from us today. So I'm going to take you now in a journey about why this is important and why more than ever we need to equip people with this knowledge, and why I would say we need to democratize access to financial literacy and to financial education. Before I do so, I'm going to can see if there are questions I need to answer potentially right away, if there are any clarification questions.
one that has popped up is a general question about how early should people start teaching financial literacy to their children? And a related question about how a lot of the education for financial literacy is written in adult language. Olga talks about how her daughter has started a glossary on financial literacy uh, for teens. And
Yeah.
and I think that's very noteworthy.
Yeah. So thank you very much. This you are already anticipating something I will want to say at the end, but let me say it right away. We need to start talking about money as soon as possible. I would say when the tooth fairy comes, it's time to talk about money. So you cannot be early enough. And contrary to what I think people think, children are very interested about money. And also because they see that money is very important. Ask a child what the money does, and he will tell you, he or she will tell you, money is about achieving dreams. And I hope that this is also the message, or like the feeling that we started to have about money. And and we need, unfortunately, to learn the language of finance. The world of finance is complex. It has its own language. It is a complex language. And part of the financial education is also to learn the language of finance, because when you are going to invest, when you are going to buy a house, when you are going to buy a car, people will use this term, and they expect people to kind of know what are the terms of the contract. So it's upon us, in a sense, to also learn that language of finance, at least the basics, as I will actually talk about in a moment. So this is actually leading nicely to the question I have designed to measure financial literacy, so you can actually see a little bit more what I'm talking about. So I'll take other questions later on, but I actually wanted to tell you that, more than 20 years ago, as I was looking at how people with very similar education and background would end up at retirement with vastly different amount of wealth, and I was thinking perhaps, the type of knowledge that they had to make this decision was really important. I realized that no data set would provide data on financial literacy, or there was no information about financial literacy. So together with Olivia Mitchell, we designed these 3 questions, which I'm actually going to just post here and put in here. And I'm not going to ask you to take this test, but I wanted to show you that what we did to measure the ABC. As you can see here, we just designed very simple questions. And what are in testing the principle behind financial decision making? The interest rate is the price of money. You're going to see it in every financial decisions. And so the first question is really about, do you know, in a sense, and can you do a simple calculation in the context of interest rate? Because when we talk about finance, that's the type of decision that you are going to make. And also you have to make very simple calculations. But again, using the interest rate, that's the price of money. The second question already is a joint test of knowledge about inflation. We don't explain inflation, but inflation is an essential component of every financial decision. Finance is about transferring money over time, but unfortunately we have to incorporate inflation, because as prices change, of course, our purchasing power changes. And the third question is quintessential about, in a sense, a glossary, meaning it's quintessential. Do we know, do people know what a stock and a stock mutual funds is? We all have to make decisions, and these are the typical financial instruments. And do we know that a single stock versus a basket of stocks will create different risk, a different capacity to manage our risk? And so what I wanted to show you, similar to, in a sense, the question that you have asked, we have designed this, what we call the ABC of personal finance, 3 questions, which are the most basics or test the most basic concept about finance. Okay, I don't know if you think this question are hard or easy, but what I can tell you is they are very hard. In fact, for the majority of the population. And here I have reported the most recent data about how many people in the US, this is a representative sample of the population, can answer these three questions. And even though you might take some, like at least we see that with age and cohort, the financial knowledge increases. What we see that even people who have made many financial decisions already, or people close to retirement, look at people perhaps even at age 50, not even half of the population can answer these three questions. If you look at the young people, that they face so many important decisions, including how to pay off their student loan, not even 1 in 10 is able to answer this question when you consider these very young, these young Americans. So, this is clearly a knowledge that we do not have. We cannot take financial literacy for granted, even in a country that has the most developed financial markets. Of course, we were able over time to design a much more detailed measure of financial literacy. And so we were able to partner with the TIA Institute. I am sure you know the TIA, and they are the kind of, they provide, they are particularly the pension company for the education industry. And we were able to get beyond the three questions. And the reason, by the way, there were three is because we were imposed just a limit of three when we first designed our measure. We were able to add them to a pilot in a big survey, but they said you only have three questions to measure financial literacy. Well, in this case, because we just want to measure personal finance knowledge, we were able to have 28 questions. And we measure each single component of the type of financial decision that I've mentioned earlier. Okay, so now we have a much more, in a sense, detailed measure of financial literacy, but unfortunately, the results are very much the same, which is even when you look at these very detailed questions, which really capture the type of financial knowledge that we need to make the everyday financial decisions, we cannot, most of Americans cannot even answer half of the questions. And this is not a C, this is not even a D, this is a clear F. So, you have to answer at least 75% of the questions in our test, in our personal finance course, to be able to get a passing grade. And that's the reality here. When it comes to this financial knowledge, we we cannot say that, this is a passing grade. Unfortunately, the knowledge is very low. And if we look at the topics where people know the least, and this has been important for us for designing the course, we see that investing, insuring, and understanding and comprehending risk, some of the topics that are fundamental for financial decision, which is mostly about managing risk, this is also what people know the least. Of course, these are also the most complex topics, but as you can see here, we have a very, very limited understanding of risk, investing, insuring, and risk management. Now, if you look at also who are those who have the lowest knowledge, not surprisingly, it's the young. And I'm mentioning this because, we can do something for the young. And this is something that we, of course, want to do and have done already in order to address this fundamental lack of knowledge that we see in the population. Now, let me just say, okay, knowledge is little, but does it matter? And I want to just give you a simple indicator, potentially, of the cost of this financial illiteracy. What we have reported here is the number of hours that people spend in dealing with and thinking about issues and problems related to personal finance. This is the number of hours per week that people spend in dealing with personal finance. And we also ask how many of these hours do they spend at work. And what I reported here is also how this varies according to the level of financial literacy. Okay? On average, people spend 8 hours per week, almost an entire day of work, right, dealing with their personal finances. And 4 of those hours are at work. Okay, so, and this is why we have also been working with employers when we are doing some of the project here. And of course, this also varies a lot with financial literacy. The more you are financially literate and the more you are going to spend, for example, dealing with and worrying about the personal finances as well. Okay. And this is why I think financial literacy is also about financial freedom. It's about, having the time to spend on other issues and not worrying about potentially the decisions that you have to make, not worrying about, dealing with potentially poor financial decision making. And this is why it's so important as well as empowering people to be able to make good decisions so they don't have to spend all of this time in their week to deal with personal finances. Now, why do we worry about financial illiteracy when we, for example, look at some indicator of financial stress, of financial issues and financial troubles? What we see is that, for example, starting from the bottom, not even half of the population has ever figured out how much they need to save for retirement, have not planned for retirement. Many, about 1/3, lack emergency savings. Again, this can be a problem. Consider what is happening in the economy. There are not just small shocks, but potentially large shocks that affect all of us. Many, 28% are financially fragile. What I mean by here is their capacity to come up with $2,000 in 30 days. And many are debt constrained. The debt constrain some of the activity they wanted to do. The issues and the reason why I talk about some of these decisions is because they matter. They are very much also related to financial literacy. So our research shows that even the knowledge of the big three, for example, allows people, enable people to actually navigate this decision better. You don't need to be an advisor, and you don't need to have sophisticated financial knowledge to navigate all of these decisions. Those basic principles are already helping people make better financial decisions. And this is why, we are so focused on that basic knowledge. Given these situations, and this is just a snapshot of, the many findings I could have shown you, is, it is time to change the conversation about money. And I want to use this wording, changes the conversation about money, because what we also see in the data is that people don't know these basics, but there is not a conversation about money. Money is often a taboo. We see people often not even using, the traditional tools to make decisions. People do not compare terms, don't discuss this topic within the family, with advisors. And as a result, this can lead to financial decisions that are not potentially the good and savvy financial decisions. Let me tell you that's why we are so delighted here at Stanford to have launched this initiative for financial decision making, or IFDM. I want to talk about the 4 pillars of these initiatives. What we would like to do is really to become the best in place, the place to come to in in terms of financial decision making. And we would like very much not just to make sure that our students have the knowledge and the skills it takes today to make good, savvy decisions, but also to be able to bring this knowledge to scale and have an impact on others as well. We plan to do so with kind of four, in a sense, strategic way. First of all, by designing and delivering the best-in-class personal finance education using all of the research that is available and using the most rigorous approach to financial decision-making. This is what we need in order to be able to have informed decisions. But we are also going to use technology and both kind of tech and artificial intelligence to expand our reach. So, for example, we are developing an app that consider all the many decisions that we are making. Often a lot of apps are only focusing on one decision. Our apps instead consider many of them. We want to leverage strategic partnerships in order to influence as well policy and programs. For example, we have been a strong advocate for mandating personal finance education across the US and around the world. And we want to be able to build the most rigorous foundation. We want all of our recommendations to be driven by data and research. Let me already mention and tell you some of the things we have already done. Last year, we were able to teach to more than 400 students. I'm teaching personal finance this term, and I have to tell you, it's one of the most popular course in economics. We have more than 300 students registered, 40 on the waiting list, and the reason we are not able to let everybody in is there is a limit on our classroom, and we are not able to find a big enough classroom to teach all of the students. So last year, we increased the number of personal finance courses to 3, including giving a course, which is just a 1 unit. If you remember the counts, we teach a 5-unit course, but we also offer a 1 unit. So the student who just wanted a little taste of personal finance could have it. And we're also planning a course for continuing education. We have created an ecosystem here at Stanford for this course, in a sense that not only we have a course, but we have a personal finance lab where the students teach other students. These are some of the students in the personal finance lab. We hold a monthly financial literacy colloquia where we bring people on campus that work on this topic to discuss personal finance, and we invite everybody. So this is really a way to take, again, the most rigorous information and then be able to translate it into our teaching. We also run a network of researchers, and we have an annual conference on personal finance and also on teaching personal finance. And I'm very happy to tell you that actually the conference on the financial literacy, the financial education symposium is going to be held here at Stanford. So, for 2 days, we have invited researchers around the world to talk about personal finance and to learn about the most recent research. And we are going to take that research and incorporate it also into our teaching. So, for example, the 2 topics that we are going to be discussing a lot, there is a keynote about how this change in the interest rate is affecting the distribution of wealth in the US. And what are the key lessons we can take for the wildfire in California about, for example, for insuring for a homeowner and also for public policy. What we have done as well is organize each year a teaching personal finance conference when we bring together from the Ivy League to the community colleges to share the experience on teaching personal finance. This is a new topic, and we want to kind of get the best practice and get the best principles so that we can indeed have the best in course, the best course, and we can design the best course for everybody. In addition to the student, we are also working with the military. There is actually a strong interest in the military about personal finance. This is also very important for their well-being, but also for their security clearance. And we are working both with West Point and the Naval Academy on project assessing how we can better help our military, and in particularly those who are also then teaching the cadets to improve financial literacy and financial knowledge. And at Stanford as well, we are collaborating with Mind Over Money. And this is actually another way in which you might be able as well to collaborate in this project. I'm going to have a kind of a call for interest or a collaboration if you'd like to work with us. There are alumni who can actually serve as mentor to the student here at Stanford, and also to provide mentorship or to provide experience and to help some of our students do better throughout the time here, but also do better in the course. We have been able to reach to policy. I want to provide here some of the initiative that we have done. We spoke to central bankers, the 27 central banker and finance minister last year in their meeting in Belgium. The topic was financial literacy, and we brought all of the data at our disposal to really show how important it is. And more recently, they have indeed incorporating financial literacy into the monetary policy. We were last March at the European Central Bank, and Christine Lagarde has very much focused on, in particular, closing the gender gap in financial literacy. The photo at the bottom is the photo of our meeting with the President of Italy, President Mattarella, where I was describing to him the work we did in Italy. I was the chair of the Financial Education Committee in charge of a national strategy for financial literacy in Italy, and happy to say that last year Italy passed a law to actually make financial education mandatory in school, starting from elementary education. We have also been able to engage with the World Economic Forum, and finally, financial education has risen to that level. And hopefully, all of the thought leaders we will be able to discuss this topic together with them and try to bring this attention not just at the domestic level, but at the global level as well. So let me come back to where we started, and I want to call it not just the basic, but beyond the basics. So we all need this financial literacy to make good financial decisions. So let me kind of go back to the 10 topics that we have discussed and make this topic, each of these topics, a recommendation for our own personal finance. We all need to know the basics to make good financial decisions. It's important for all of us to have a budget. It's important for all of us to build a buffer stock of savings, that it can be a shield against shock. It's important that in particular we manage our debt, because that's where the high interest rate normally come, and it's very hard it's very easy to, for the debt to grow when you are charged the interest rate that, for example, credit card charges. And it's very important as well to make sure that there is a good balance with our debt and asset. We want to maximize our FICO score and, of course, know what are the components of that score. So we keep that score at the highest level. We want to evaluate whether it's good for us to buy a house and a car and other important purchases. It's important that we grow our wealth by investing in financial market and in our talents. We need to plan for the future. and take advantage of all the benefit that the employer is providing to us. It's important that we insure ourselves against major risk. I have 5 additional recommendations, in particular for this audience. I think what is very important, and what these 10 also recommendation are in a sense a financial checkup. And as we do a checkup for our car or our health, it's also important that we do also a regular checkups. And a checkup could be the answer to these 10 questions. Do we have each of those items in place in our financial situations? In addition, we need to be really well informed about the new investment opportunity. There are always so much innovation in the financial markets. There are good investment opportunities, as you can see, as you have probably witnessed. There is a lot of new product, for example, private equity, outside of, for example, public companies and so on. And I think it's very important for us to be well informed about these new opportunities. And the other recommendations is that we need to plan as much as possible for our future. We face a much longer lifetime, which brings unique challenges. So, for example, we are going to all be dealing with aging parents, and probably for a longer period of time than before. And again, this is an important factor to take into consideration, because healthcare and some of those considerations, some of these decisions, for example, later in life, or how to deal with declining health of our parents or our own declining health, is very important, and I think as important financial consideration. And finally, somebody has already mentioned this, but one of my biggest recommendations is to talk to your children or your grandchildren about money. This is fundamental. This is important, and socialization starts very, very early. And also, I'd like to ask all of you to become a financial literacy ambassador. And what it means is, ask for financial literacy in your school, in your workplace, in your community. We can all play a role when it comes to financial literacy. And I know I've given a lot of numbers in this presentation, but let me just leave you with an image of what I think about when I think about financial literacy. I think financial literacy is like water in an ecosystem. We all need it to grow and flourish. And I hope you can visit our website at the IFDM for getting more information. And I know I've given a lot of data, presentations, numbers. And so let's now maybe use the remaining time we have for questions.
I will group a few questions that came up regarding the data that you showed. You broke down your data on age, but we have a grouping of questions asking if you also looked into class, gender, education level, and if joint decision making was taken into account. Can you just give a little bit more information about the data that you showed?
No, thank you for these questions. I didn't want to bring too many graphs to the table, but let me tell you at least a couple of important findings. So first of all, you might be surprised to know that there is not just a gender difference in financial literacy, but this gender difference is so pervasive that it is there around the world. So it's there at every age group, it's there among the young and among the old, it's there across education level, it's there in every country. So we have done a lot of work trying to address this topic because clearly also women really do need the financial literacy, and that lower knowledge can really be a detriment. We have also looked at, of course, across income and education group. And as you might expect, financial literacy is particularly low among those with lower income and lower education. And this is again important because, dealing with finance can be even more fundamental for people, for example, with lower income that have to make their finances, really work. And this is actually another reason why some of our programs are also targeting some specific group of the population. One of the reasons, for example, we are targeting the young is also because they are the one that have lower financial knowledge. But we have also, in a sense, a special attention and program here at Stanford for first generation students, for low income students. And one of the things that I think has been extremely heartwarming for us is many of the students who take the course, particularly the first generation student, they tell us that they have become the financial advisor to their parents. And we see this, by the way, also in the research. In one of the big studies done for high school education, what has been found is that it is the children who, when they acquire financial knowledge, bring it back to the parents, which really speaks of the important role of school and university in providing this knowledge. We can educate not just the student, we can give them this rigorous knowledge, but then from there, we can also reach the adult population. And Jackie, I'll take your question.
Thank you so much for the presentation, for the work that you're doing. It's incredible. And I had a question related to what you just addressed, which is, in my own experience, I came back to school very late in life. I was in my 40s when I got into Stanford as an undergraduate. And what I found was there was a lot of values conflicts from coming from a very poor background. And I noticed that a lot of people, I had more in common with other people who came from poor backgrounds. And there was this issue of perceiving the pursuit of financial security as being in conflict with more communalistic, interdependent norm of you share all your resources and you don't kind of focus on yourself and making your own life more stable. I encounter that constantly, and I encounter it in communities of artists. There's this values conflict, and I'm curious if you've ever studied that.
Thank you, Jackie. I have to say, when when I talk, or when in our first class, right, when I talk about this, I just realized, that money comes with a view, right, or with our culture, with our values. And for many people, money is considered, for example, taboo, right? For, many people think, well, we shouldn't, this is greedy. We are talking about capitalism here. We are talking about, making the best of ourselves, right? With respect to helping others. I actually think that, the way we should think, in my view, about money is the same way we think about health. We need to take care of our health. And in the same way, we need to take care about our financial health. Is what makes us, in a sense, feel better. We all need financial security and financial stability. And this is why I've used the word, we need to change the conversation about money, because financial well-being is important. And it also starts with some basic practice. In the same way, we walk in the morning, we don't smoke, or, we exercise. I think we need some good practice for our financial health, taking into consideration that if we are financially stable, then we can also help others. We can help our parents, our children, our community. And so, this is a win-win for everybody, but we need to get away from this idea, right, that money is bad and, it's exploiting others. It is really to do about financial well-being. And so I just also wanted to tell you that there is a question I ask to my students in the first class, and which is, what do you think this course is about? And I think many of these topics come, back in, people think it's about investing, that we learn how to invest, that we learn how to beat the system and so on. And what I tell them, this course is a happiness project. It teaches you how to make good financial decisions that will benefit yourself and also your community. I see that, Stoica, you have your hands up.
Hi, I'm Stoica from Romania. I want to thank you for this amazing presentation. I personally agree with everything that you said. But how do I answer to a person who says, "Oh, I put my life savings into the stock exchange, and now a large percentage of my savings are gone, they're wiped out overnight." And it's hard. You're talking about happiness, and of course, being financially literate is very important for your happiness. But there's moments like this in the economy when you probably are not happy to see your savings being wiped out. And I'm sure you probably can't talk about the politics, but what kind of answer can we still give to people who ask this question?
Again, so first of all, thank you very much for these questions. And, this is very related in a sense to, what I have been discussing, which is yet again, how should you make these decisions about investing in the stock market, right? First of all, you need to be well diversified. So don't put all of your eggs in one basket. Don't make all of your investment, for example, be in risky activities. And also you need to, consider what is your objective. You need to invest in the stock market when you have a long-term horizon, right? A lot of people are panicking about this stock market, but, do you need the money now, right? If you are not, in a sense, needing the money now, then, this fluctuation in the stock market shouldn't much matter. To tell you the truth, when you look at the history, even after big wars, the stock market not only plummeted, but then came back in a month time and so on, right? Yes, your wealth is going down now because market do fluctuate, but if you don't need to liquidate the money, there is, not an immediate effect on you. And if you needed to liquidate the money, probably having so much money in the stock market was not a good decision to start with. This is investment 101 in a sense. Very much I'd like to mention again one of our recommendations that we have, which is please do be an ambassador of financial literacy and financial knowledge. It starts with really your community. And if you were to ask for it, for example, in your library, in your school, district, even at your employer, I think, we can all contribute to do so. And I do hope that, you'll be keeping informed or in touch with us about this initiative. We very much appreciate kind of the help, the support, and would love to kind of keep in touch with all of you and all of those who have an interest in this topic, and teach to your children or grandchildren about money.